Happy Thanksgiving, Detroit sports fanatics. It is midnight on Thanksgiving Day now, and welcome to episode 175 of the Detroit Sports Truth on Spreaker. I'm Taylor Phillips, and I'm with my top co-host on the podcast, Ed Smith. Thanks so much for being on here. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Taylor, and I share your thoughts as well as to those right now currently as we speak on the East Coast. Happy Thanksgiving to all, and those who have not celebrated or have not had it turn midnight yet. Happy early Thanksgiving to you all as well.
All right. Well, today we're going to talk about the Lions' Thanksgiving Day game against the Philadelphia Eagles at Ford Field, of course. We're going to start with that. Plus, them hiring a former general manager, Ernie Accorsi, helping them find their next general manager. He used to be the GM of the New York Giants, Indianapolis Colts, and Cleveland Browns. Plus, we'll take a look at the college football top 10 rankings. We'll preview Michigan and Ohio State this upcoming weekend, as well as MSU and Penn State, and even CMU and Eastern Michigan. Then we'll dive into some Red Wings, a lot to talk about there, lots of issues they have right now, and they all matter. Don't think they don't. And we'll touch on a bit of Pistons there too. They had a nice game against the fourth-seeded Miami Heat, routing them 104-81. We'll touch on college basketball. The Wolverines, under John Beilein, losing 2 in a row, both routes at home. And finally, we'll wrap up the show with Joakim Soria, former Tigers closing pitcher, rejecting an offer from the Tigers. And we'll analyze that. But first off, the Lions kick off Thanksgiving Day with a game at Ford Field against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Lions have given both their last two opponents a third straight loss. They beat the Green Bay Packers 18-16 at Lambeau Field for the first time since 1991. Then they hung on to beat the Oakland Raiders at Ford Field 18-13. Both of those two teams that the Lions beat have lost 3 in a row now. Now the Lions are looking at the Philadelphia Eagles here. The Eagles have also lost 2 straight games, and the Lions have a chance to hand them a third straight loss. If the Lions win, they hand a third straight opponent a third straight loss, and we could be seeing a continuous omen, but the Lions don't have much of a chance of making the playoffs this season, of course, and they still should keep tanking for that draft pick, Robert Condici, who, as you mentioned on Blog Talk Radio, has dropped a bit in the mock draft as of now. Wide receiver Calvin Johnson still has his ankle injury and is currently listed as questionable for the contest. Ed, I want you to preview the game and get the Spreaker audience plugged in on how Condici has done for Ole Miss Rebels thus far.
Well, for those who may not know or who or what I'm referring to or speaking of, Robert Condici is the defensive lineman who plays number 5, who plays with the at Ole Miss with the Running Rebels. Well, not the Running Rebels, just the Rebels. Excuse me, I'm thinking of UNLV. Anyway, back on point. Condici first got a lot of national exposure in terms of mock draft and his potential stock in the upcoming NFL draft with some would say, a breakout performance in the early in the season against Alabama when he was one-man wrecking crew and blowing up each and every type of play that Alabama tried to run in the backfield. He got a considerable amount of attention for it. And in the ensuing weeks since then, he's garnered somewhat of you would say a radar, so to speak, of players to look out for in this game. Now, granted, that's going to draw the eye of not just fans of looking to see the next big thing, what might be on Sundays in the future, but also scouts and not to mention opponents, opposing offensive coordinators that might try to scheme and game plan around stifling Kendichi. And I think it's worked to a degree, although I believe it's also been hampered by the fact that in recent games, Kendichi had to miss some time due to a concussion he suffered. But even still, I still think it's a very formidable talent with good to great potential. In ways, he reminds me a bit of what the Lions used to have in Ndamukong Suh, only he's a little bit smaller, but I do believe he's a little bit faster. They both, in my view, have the same amount of strength and could cause problems and, at the very least, stopping the run. I don't see Kendichi as a get to the quarterback type of guy the way Suh is, but I could definitely see him as a guy that'll be able to stop up the run in certain instances. That's why practically since week 2 or 3, I've started the bandwagon, so to speak, a movement, you could say. And it's a hashtag that I've used on Twitter a number of times. You can use it too. It's called Streaky for Kendichi. If you don't know how to spell its name, it's Nkemdiche. The N is silent. So I've been using it practically every single week since about, second or third week of the season. It went great when the Lions started out 1-7. But now, since they've won 2 straight games, it's putting that movement in a bit of a danger zone. So you would hope, given the fact that the Lions, until recently have stunk up the joint on Thanksgiving, it will return back to their losing ways and keep this movement alive. But I don't know. You're facing a Philadelphia Eagles team that really... I'm not sure if they played in any other division besides the NFC East, they'll be a playoff contender right now. That's just how I see it. The division itself is a bit weak. It didn't help matters that the Cowboys, the perennial frontrunners, lost both Tony Romo and Des Bryant to start the season, so that alone was going to water down the division. And so you're seeing it play up before our eyes. I think probably the AFC South is a worse division than the NFC East has been this year, but that's besides the point. Much like Oakland was last week, the Eagles find themselves in a position where, as we get closer to the end of the season, every game matters in terms of getting a playoff spot. So, you don't necessarily, it's not the end of the world if you lose, but then again, it does not help your chances of getting the playoff spot either should you drop this game. So, in terms of who needs this game more, obviously, clearly, Philly needs this, in my view. Not to mention, if you want to dispel possible talk to fans, at least for a year, of fans wanting to get rid of Chip Kelly, if you're Philly, you want to make the playoffs this year at least. The Lions, they got nowhere to go. We know that. This is, in my view, they're in rebuild mode. They shouldn't be, let's try to get to the playoffs. No, this is a full-blown build from scratch, although really, if it was built from scratch, the Ford should have sold the team, but that's another topic for another day. This is a game that could go either way. Like I said, it seems like that's always been the case for the Lions on Thanksgiving, especially now with, I guess you'd say, since 2011, when games have been more closely, with the exception of Green Bay and Chicago, these games have been a bit more closely contested. So the cynic in me would, of course, like to see a Lions loss to not only preserve my own campaign that I started, but also just assure fans that, listen, no matter what, Jim Caldwell at least will be fired. You would think after they axed the GM and president, and Martin Mayhew and Tom Awan, by the way, it should be noted, was Bill Ford Jr.'s childhood friend, so they axed him, gave him the boot, of all people. Maybe you think, and even if they fired Mayhew, you think maybe they will soon be cutting Caldwell loose soon, but you never know. You never know in this situation until the season's officially over, but let's hope it is that case. I think Stafford, there's a multitude of ways to break this down. I think Matthew Stafford, if he's given some time to be protected by his offensive line, he can have a good game. I've always felt that Stafford is good. I won't say he's great. He's elite. No. Tom Brady is elite. Aaron Rodgers is elite. Drew Brees is elite. Stafford is in that mid-tier range. He's not terrible, okay? He's not like a Cleveland Browns starting quarterback, but he's nowhere near the aforementioned names that I've stated. So when he's on, he can have a very good stretch and possibly lead you to a victory or two. But it depends on A, if his line is protecting him, and B, Stafford is aware of what's on around him on the field, and C is sometimes his mechanics. Calvin Johnson, I believe, at his utmost potential, is possibly the best wide receiver in the game. Some will argue for Des Bryant or Antonio Brown, but for my money, maybe I'm a bit biased, it's Megatron, but he has not had quite a great year by his standards. He, of course, had the fumble that cost him the game at Seattle, almost cost him a game at Green Bay with the failed catch, the onside kick, but even still, Megatron is something to not sleep on. He can still be dangerous. He can still jump out the gym and catch the ball at its highest point, even with three guys defending him. So you always want to be aware of him. And it's nice that you have other weapons like Golden Tate and Amir Abdullah, who, if he keeps his fumbles down, can be a very, very productive weapon for the Lions offense for years to come. So the talent is there. There's no doubt about that. I'm not rooting for the Lions to lose because I'm a miserable person. No, in fact, the reason why I'm doing this is because I hope they get better in the long term. This is a long-term thing that I'm seeing as by rooting for them to lose this season. But they keep going all, Pistons in the late of the season, screwing themselves out of a lottery pick type of deal and winning all these meaningless games. It's going to cause me to grow even more frustrated to the point where I don't care what happens to this team, and I don't want to see that. I've come too far. Well, this team has come too far in, I guess you could say, coming out from the abyss that was 0-16 in the years with Matt Millen. And granted, they have their own take one step forward, three steps back type of deals, whether it be the bad drafts by Martin Mayhew, losing the best defensive player you'll ever have in Ndamukong Suh, and of course this current mess with the coaching staff of that includes Jim Caldwell. Granted, I may be a sap in all this, but I still think there may be something around the corner in terms of looking out over the horizon, seeing what good could come out of this. The talent is there. There's no doubt about it. We just need to find a way to have the right coaches in place to utilize the best talents and abilities of our players. And even with that, you would hope you have a better front office. It has been quite exactly an easy thing to have because, granted, we've been basically in the past 15 years been under the whole regime from Matt Millen and his descendants. Well, when you consider Martin Mayhew was an understudy of his. So you hope they branch away from that, but then again, when you hire Rod Wood, who basically was essentially a family hire from the Fords, and who himself admitted would probably not be given this type of job for any other team in the NFL, it makes you very less confident what this team can do. Certainly when it comes to hiring their next GM, but we'll see what happens in that regard. As for the game, I'm going to say maybe Philly, they couldn't capitalize on a turnover or two, and late in the game, they use it to their advantage. I say they win 31-27 type of deal.
Yeah, this you're saying that this may finish in a close margin. You see we saw the way Stafford got his quarterback keeping play for that game-winning touchdown. They pretty much buried it with a safety against Oakland, and the defense did the rest. But you were right. I think the Eagles are a bit too much. I think that'll help the Lions' chances of getting Robert Nkemdiche. I agree with that. And the Lions play the Packers after that a week from Sunday, I think.
I believe they are playing them on the Thursday night game, which is be the week after tomorrow. So I remember looking it up on the, I think that's what was stated on the schedule. Yeah, because I believe the Lions have a Thursday night game in addition to the Thanksgiving game, and I believe it is the one at home against Green Bay. So I'm thinking that's next on the schedule. And if hopefully, if you're on the Streaky for Comedian bandwagon, you hope for a more motivated and angry Packers team to come into Ford Field and just run roughshod over the Lions that, quite frankly, that did not deserve to win that game up at Lambeau. The Packers, I don't know what they were on or what they did, but they clearly handed that game to Detroit. So maybe after getting their heads straight and beating down the Vikings this past Sunday, they'll get them more focused and say, hey, this division is within our grasp. Let's go out there and take it by the throat. And they'll showcase that, hopefully, by taking it out on the Lions next week. But that's for next week's show when we preview that game. As for this week, I expect this to go, like I mentioned, down the wire, like we have seen a bit in recent years. And I would say, hopefully, that the Philadelphia Eagles will pull it out with a late win.
You mean with a late game-winning touchdown?
Yeah, touchdown would suffice.
All right. Well, we got a source that the Lions have also hired former New York Giants, Indianapolis Colts, and Cleveland Browns general manager Ernie Accorsi to help find their next general manager. And trying to get the source again. Searching on my Detroit Sports page timeline here. Oh, got it. There was a quote saying impeccable. Let me get to that. I'm opening up the link right now. It's loading. It came from Pro Football Talk from NBCSports.com. As I post my episode on LinkedIn here while I wait. This source by Josh Alper, 2:26 p.m. earlier Wednesday, that in a press conference last week, new Lions president Rod Wood said that the team would bring in an outside advisor to help them in a search for a new general manager, and that outside advisor is Ernie Accorsi. He has also done something for the Carolina Panthers and Chicago Bears in recent years. Rod Wood said, quote, "We are most pleased that Ernie Accorsi will serve as a consultant for our GM search," the general manager. "Ernie's reputation is impeccable." That's the quote I was looking for. Not only did he succeed as a general manager in the NFL, but his work as a consultant with teams like Chicago and Carolina is well documented, unquote. Accorsi will be charged with leading a search for a new head of the Lions personnel department. Interim general manager Sheldon White will be part of the group under consideration for the job, and the Lions could also bring in execs like Mark Ross, Chris Ballard, Brian Gain, and Lake Dawson, as they've been up for other GM jobs in recent years. So I'm pretty sure at least one or two of those guys, is better than Sheldon White. Ed, take that one away.
I touched on it briefly, but long story short, it will be falling back into the same pattern of not only, I guess you could say, a degree of nepotism, but also just too much loyalty. Too much loyalty, I would say, to a certain extent. I think if you hire someone other than Sheldon White, you would give those looking for the outside saying, hey, you know what, granted their football president might not be, like I said, by his own words, a good choice for any other team, but as long as he's deferring to the GM and the GM knows what he's doing, maybe have a shot. But if it's Sheldon White, I virtually have no hope. I'll just put it bluntly like that.
So, between Mark Ross, Chris Ballard, Brian Gain, and Lake Dawson, which would you take?
I don't know. I got to look back up more on those. But at this point, I almost want to take the option of anyone but Sheldon White to prove, for at least this is another chance for the Ford family to say, we're willing to get better. But if they hire Sheldon White, it would just... It may lead to me giving up hope for this team until the Ford family sells the team. I'm just putting it out there in the open right now. So that's how I feel in that situation in that regard.
All right. Well, why don't we move on to college football? Starting with the top 10, the Michigan State Spartans have moved up to number 5, and the Michigan Wolverines have moved up to number 10. The rest of the list looks like this. Number 1 is Clemson. Number 2 is Alabama. Number 3 is Oklahoma. Number 4 is Iowa. Number 6, Notre Dame. Number 7, Baylor. Number 8, Ohio State from their devastating loss to MSU. And number 9, Stanford. So it's a little more surprising that Michigan has climbed up to the top 10, but they kind of earned it that in some kind of way, and for Michigan State, they deserve to be in the top 5. They upset a number 3 team.
Yeah, it was clearly, and if you look back now on their resume for this season, it's making MSU's chances for the playoff, for the college football playoff, that more possible when you see how Oregon has done in recent weeks. Remember, that was one of the teams MSU beat. Now, Oregon may have a potential shot of getting to the Pac-12 championship game, but it's highly unlikely. It would be unlikely if Stanford were to beat Notre Dame this weekend. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out, because like I said, it makes MSU's resume look better. But some of these other teams in the top 10, and even on the outskirts of the top 10, a couple of them have a collision course with each other this weekend, namely Notre Dame and Stanford, as well as Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, the Bedlam game, the rivalry game for that one. Now, granted, even though they have 2 losses, they're in the top 10. Michigan is at the 10th spot. Now, it would still take a lot of crazy things to happen, but I think Michigan might still have an outside shot at making the college football playoff. Now, hear me out on this one, okay? You would need some help. Big help. You would need a Michigan State loss to Penn State. You would need a Michigan win against Ohio State. Not only would that bump you ahead of Ohio State, that would put you closer to the top 5, and of course would get you the Big Ten East Divisional crown and put you in the Big Ten championship game. Then after that, you would need a couple of teams ahead of you to fall, namely Notre Dame losing to Stanford, and Oklahoma losing to Oklahoma State, as well as Baylor losing to TCU. All those things happen. Michigan wins this week, and when it puts them right on the outside of the top, at the top 5, maybe outside top 4, when they face Iowa, hypothetically, in the Big Ten championship game. Now, whoever I think it's pretty much given Clemson and Alabama, unless they somehow stumble in their last 2 games, either against Auburn or against Florida in the SEC championship game. Bad stumbles, that sort of chaotic shocker, Michigan will need a lot of help still, like the scenario I just mentioned. But even that, if Michigan were to do that and beat Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, given the scenario that I just listed, it could give them a chance to be placed as one of the the last team in the Final Four. For the college football playoff, because they would have finished out their season with 2 wins consecutively over 2 top 10 teams in the rankings, and not to mention one of their losses was literally a fluke loss. in a sense, because, well, not in a sense, because that's what happened. A lot of people see it that way, even if upset, maybe if you're a diehard Spartan fan. But other than that, you can't really argue against Michigan's case, especially in year one of the Jim Harbaugh era. Their defense has been stout. Their quarterback has improved week by week, it seems. We have a star player, a star athlete, period, in Jabril Peppers. All those factors go into play when the committee is making a choice. That's how Michigan has made their rise, and now they're up to 10. Now, they still need a lot of stuff to happen, and quite frankly, I don't think it's going to happen until they'll make the playoff. But another scenario that could happen is them possibly making the Rose Bowl. Now, you might be asking yourself, wait a minute, wouldn't the Big Ten champion be making the Rose Bowl? Well, yes, in this case. But in the instance that the Big Ten champion gets to the playoff, whether it be Michigan State or Iowa. Now, in this case, believe it or not, you would hope for Michigan State. Because if Michigan State makes the college football playoff, then that means the Rose Bowl committee will have to make a choice on who they would choose to send to the Rose Bowl in wake of the champion, the conference champion that went to the playoff. And if you factor in the scenarios, not the scenarios, the intangibles that Michigan has as a brand, recognition, fan base, and potential ratings draw, not to mention the fact it's Jim Harbaugh in his first year, and he's brought his team, this program thus far. And also, I believe I've read that the Rose Bowl will also receive some input from ESPN. You know damn well ESPN who they will want to see in that game. And sorry, Hawkeye fans, but if it came down to a one-loss Iowa team, even if against a two-loss Michigan team, if it's a two-loss Michigan team on the fringe of that top 6 or top 5 ranking, I'm pretty sure that the Rose Bowl committee would pick Michigan in that case. So I would say probably a good 65% shot that will happen. Now, again, that it's if Michigan beats Ohio State, and Michigan State not only wins this week against Penn State, but they make it to the Big Ten championship game and beat Iowa and make the Final Four. So all that is on the table for Michigan, but that will be all moot if they lose against Ohio State, which I think we should segue now into our next talking point, Taylor.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and preview the Michigan Wolverines and the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Touchdown, Michigan!
Michigan is at home against Ohio State. It is at noon on ABC on Saturday. Is that right?
Yep. It's a showdown at noon, like it has been for many, many years between these two rivals. On rare occurrences, rare occasions, you will see them start at a later time. There's only 2 instances I can remember that the game started at 3:30. It was 1985 in Ann Arbor, the Harbaugh to Colasar, where we saw the overcast and the light shine at the big house. And then, of course, the 2006 showdown, the clash between number 1 OSU and number 2 Michigan, both teams unbeaten, to determine who would go to the BCS National Championship. That, of course, is won by Ohio State. Other than that, this would be another, even though both teams are ranked in the top 10, even though it's a highly anticipated clash of coaches between Jim Harbaugh and Urban Meyer, this will not get a move in the time slot. Now, that's for now, for this year, but I won't be surprised in future years. Say, for instance, it's a top 5 or another number 1 versus number 2 scenario where both teams are undefeated, that, given the circumstance, we could see this game actually get moved to a primetime slot, or at least to a 3:30 slot, because I don't know, maybe it'll be a nice visual to see, we've seen it at Columbus Stadium, but maybe a nice visual to see under the lights at the big house, Michigan versus Ohio State, the history of the rivalry, and what else would be at stake at that particular game, whether it be Big Ten championship or national championship implications. But that's looking far ahead to the future. Let's focus on the here and the now. when the lines opened for this game about a week ago, after the Michigan State defeat of the Buckeyes, Vegas was, it was going, I guess you could say, bipolar with its line swings. First, it opened up as Michigan a 2.5 point underdog. Then it moved to Michigan being a 1.5 point favorite. Then Michigan 2 points. Then Michigan 3 points. Then back to Ohio State's favor. And now, as I'm currently looking, it's about even, which practically means this is virtually a toss-up. And now I agree with that scenario because, especially with the fallout of Ezekiel Elliott's comments and actions, well, not say actions, but how he voiced those comments, the emotion that he used to voice those comments in the wake of the loss to Michigan State, it gives a view to those that maybe were witnessing a meltdown in the locker rooms of the Columbus. So if that's the case, this could be a prime opportunity for the Wolverines to strike. But it will not be easy because Elliott is a very, very, very talented individual. And then not to mention they do have the three-headed monster of him and Braxton Miller and J.T. Barrett. So this will not be an easy task. As for this game, I could see it go a lot of ways. I could see it easily be another shootout. I think that it's been the case the last two times they've come to Ann Arbor. The game has been played in Ann Arbor, rather. It's more than 70 points at least have been scored between two teams. I could see it that way. On the other hand, I could see it a bit more of a defensive showdown. Both teams are held under 30. It'll be a chess match to see not so much who is going to get the ball last to score, but who can make the last stop defensively. An interesting clash of styles and the clash of players. It'll be interesting to see who will be covering Braxton Miller on the other side of the field. Will it be Jabril Peppers? Will it be Jordan Lewis, who, in my view, along with other Wolverine fans, was snubbed for an All-American award this past week? So maybe he'll have something to prove. He'll have a chip on his shoulder. And what better way to take it out on a former Heisman hopeful in Braxton Miller? As for using their athletes as decoys, we may be seeing a little bit more of what we had seen in recent weeks with Jabril Peppers not just being used on defense and being used in return game, but also used on offensive plays, whether that's a decoy or being part of the play itself. Same thing with Miller on the other side for the Buckeyes. I think this will come down more to, in some ways, a battle of the trenches. Can Michigan's offensive line be able to give Jake Rudock enough protection after the way they stood up to Penn State's monstrous defensive line last week? Can they do the same thing, or at least similar, for Rudock to give him time? Because as you can see, Rudock has been coming alive more and more late in the season, and you're going to need that for your quarterback in these type of games late in November. So if that happens, things will look good for Michigan that way. Other side, if Michigan can't get pressure on J.T. Barrett, or at least stop him up front when it comes to the running game, the Wolverines will have the Wolverine defense will have a long day in that regard. Because while I have faith in the secondary with the cornerback situation, Peppers and Lewis on opposite sides of the field, there's still some questions of what the front seven can do, especially now with the recent loss of Ryan Glasgow to injury. Will Ohio State be more content to just run the ball right down Michigan's throat using either Elliott or Barrett in that situation? So it will really, to me, come down to which defensive front can establish their will first, and can they keep that going throughout the entire game? And that will be the tale of the tale as to who might eventually pull out the win in that regard. So that's like the key. If I could bring out a key to the game, that would be my biggest key of all. Whose defensive front will establish their will more in that regard. I think now it comes to the point where you're going to be asking me who do I think will win this game? Well, this is probably the only time of the year where I will throw logic out the window and go purely with my heart instead of my head. Now people may be saying, but Ed, you picked Michigan virtually for every game this year. How is that not hard overhead. Well, that's simple. No, in the games that they've lost, it's either been in both instances, it's been right down to the wire. In the case of Michigan State, literally on the last play of the game. I think I deserve a mulligan for the Utah game because it was the opening game of the season. I figured, hey, anything could happen in that regard. For the Michigan State game, I think I was well on point with my prediction, except, like I said, literally the last play of the game, because other than that, Michigan would have won. And of course, every other game, Michigan has won this year, even though it's gotten close and scary. See Indiana. But for this one, I will pull out the homer card, label me a slap or Walmart, whatever you want to label me. But I say Michigan, they get the win. It's a close, nail-biting, razor wire finish. I would predict Michigan 42, Ohio State 36.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's not going to be like by 1 to 2 points. It's like by like a single touchdown without any extra points.
I see it similar to the 2011 and 2013 games in terms of offensive explosion, because that's what it's been in recent years between these two teams. The emotions, not just the fan bases, but the players on the field. You know, they obviously get up for this type of game. It's the biggest game of the year for a variety of reasons for both teams. So both teams are going to be aiming to be playing at their very best, at their absolute peak. So it wouldn't surprise me to see if both teams just dropped a bunch of points on each other, and we've seen that being proven true in recent years. So I wouldn't be surprised if that trend continues, hence my prediction of the score of the game.
And speaking of Utah, the Utes have dropped 10 spots to number 23, capping off your mentioning that you do deserve a mulligan for Michigan's loss to Utah in the season opener. That game was close. It was by only a touchdown on the road.
Yeah, I mean, when you factor in that, literally the difference in that game was a late turnover pick six from Rudock. You could see, you can make a case that if Michigan wins that game, even they might be knocking on the door of a spot in the college football playoff right now. And of course, the same thing applies to the Michigan State game. Whereas if you don't drop the punt, you're on the doorstep of possibly reaching the top four right now if you're not already in it. So, but a brief word to mention before we move on to the other talking points of our show tonight. As we all know, Chad Carr, the 4-year-old, the 4-year-old grandson of former Michigan coach Lloyd Carr, he passed away this past Monday. He had recently gone through a brief battle with brain cancer. As it was discovered, he had an inoperable brain tumor. Awareness and donations were made in his name using the hashtag ChadTough on Twitter. All sorts of condolences and heartfelt wishes and thoughts and good vibes have been poured out in the past 72 hours or so, especially to the Carr family. We've seen Tom Izzo and Mark D'Antonio and John Beilein mention it in their press conferences, spreading their thoughts and well wishes to Chad's family in this time of need. It reminds me a little bit of the Princess Lacey story for MSU last year. The adorable little girl who had her own illness battle and unfortunately passed away. So it's nice to see, even during times of heated rivalry talk, whatever, we can at least be civilized for a little bit and pay respects and well wishes in times of need to those who need them. So good, classy gestures by all involved. I wouldn't be surprised if before the game, Chad is honored in memoriam in some sort before the game in Ann Arbor. So I will continue the outpouring here. Give my thoughts, prayers, well wishes, and good vibes to the Carr family in this time of need. Rest in peace, little Chad.
Rest in peace, Chad Carr, indeed. Speaking of tragedies, the Ohio State-Michigan football tradition, which appears to be the Mirror Lake jump, was banned after a student died early Wednesday morning, according to the Columbus Dispatch. The Columbus Dispatch. The body was pulled out from the water inside like a water well or something like that. The guy that died, his name is Austin Singletary. He was a third-year student from Dayton. The university said officials say they won't allow the practice to continue because of that. Ohio State University officials have warned the traditional Michigan Week jump into Mirror Lake is a bad idea before the death happened. And Singletary's body was pulled from the lake in cardiac arrest at 12:20 a.m. on Wednesday. He was treated immediately by paramedics, but died later in the morning at Ohio State's Wexner Medical Center. For that Mirror Lake jumping tradition has been banned. Franklin County Coroner Anahi Ortiz said an autopsy will be performed on Thursday in hopes of finding a possible preliminary cause of death. A final ruling on Singletary's death won't be determined until toxicology tests come back, which usually means an additional 6 weeks, Ortiz said. This from the Columbus Dispatch, again by Mary Mogan Edwards, Wednesday, November 25th, 2015. I give credit to that, to Mary Edwards. Singletary was one of thousands who jumped into the lake as part of a tradition that is repeated each year on Tuesday night of the week of the Ohio State-Michigan football game. A Dispatch video showed students continuing to jump, splash, and shout just for fun, apparently oblivious as paramedics worked on Singletary a few feet away. The emergency department at the medical center also treated about a dozen other students after the jump, which is in line with most years. By Wednesday morning, after the dive team was gone and the clothing and trash left behind by the jumpers had been cleared away, students who walked by Mirror Lake seemed unanimous in their belief that the tradition would continue. But it was finally stopped. And students thought, quote unquote, there was no way they could stop it. And it truthfully has become a leading cause of death. And Mirror Lake is probably full of toxic waste or something like that inside the lake's water. And if they were going to continue to do that, they would have to jump inside a different lake just to survive.
Yeah.
Make sure it's a cleaner one.
If you want to do this, because I think this is probably the first occurrence of this happening. If that wasn't the case, if there had been prior health hazards before, they would have been stopped this. If you want to continue, I wouldn't be surprised if you did move it to a different lake or a well-known, safer lake, or a pool, river, whatever the case may be. You hope this will be just a rare freak occurrence type of thing, but then again, I appreciate them for precautionary reasons, at least temporarily, banning this activity, because you don't want to start a trend, you don't want to start a domino effect. So whatever decision they go with, as long as they handle it carefully and responsively, it'll be seen as a good decision in my view.
Yeah, we have no word on whether it is temporary or permanent yet, but there's more. Students responded with a social media campaign calling for an unofficial jump on Monday night instead of Tuesday night, which still won't work. It doesn't matter what particular day. That kind of water is pretty dangerous to jump into. So this year, OSU officials tweaked the plan by enlarging the fence area and creating 2 entrances instead of 1, along with several one-way exits. To receive a wristband allowing them into the lake area, students have gone to one of 2 locations in advance and swiped their official university ID card, which ensured each student could get only 1 wristband. Each also received a 1-page memo with information about the dangers of jumping and tips on how to avoid hypothermia and getting hurt. As news of the death became known on Wednesday, students on social media were divided over whether the jump should be banned. Some urged OSU officials not to overreact, and others chastised posters for arguing about it in light of Singletary's death. Bunch of chaos going around on there in Columbus, Ohio. OSU's undergraduate student government, which has endorsed the university's restrictions on the jump, issued a statement on Wednesday supporting the end of the Mirror Lake jump and pledging to help develop a new ritual. And finally, student government President Abby Grossman, who said she participated in the jump, said the tradition had the positive effect of bringing thousands of students together for a shared experience, but added that she's certain that, quote, those positive aspects can absolutely be replicated in another setting that's safer, unquote. I don't know what she's trying to say. If she'd only explain it further about what is safer about this whole thing.
Just have a more level out the restrictions on certain areas, where to and where not to go in the water. I think that's how I would do it, at least my view.
Yep. I'd have to agree. So, Ohio State and Michigan at noon on ABC. Now we move on to Penn State and Michigan State.
Touchdown, MSU!
Spartans take on the Nittany Lions. Kickoff 3:30. That is also on ABC. I think the Spartans will be a little bit somewhat too much for the Nittany Lions to overcome. Tyler O'Connor is only getting warmed up, but he provided just enough offense to set up Michael Geiger's game-winning 25-yard field goal. He provided the offense, helped the offense provide 2 touchdowns for the football program against number 3 Ohio State, and it would be a little bit of an easier task, not too much, but I think Michigan State will pull it off.
Yeah, even without Connor Cook potentially for the second straight game, this was a game you think Michigan State should handle easily, especially at home, senior day, chance to get back to the Big Ten championship game, chance potentially to sew up your first berth in the college football playoff. It should be Michigan State should win this game by more than what Vegas is projecting. I believe the current line is MSU is favored by 11. This should be a 3-possession win for MSU, whether it be 17 points at least. But crazier things have happened, especially concerning interconference games late in the season. But this one, to me, Michigan State should have no worries. This is not like Nebraska. This one look where I expressed some concern going in. No, as much as my Wolverine-loving heart would love to see it, MSU should be no test, no difficulty for Michigan State. MSU should handle this one easily and just start counting down the days to facing Iowa in Indy for the right to go to the college football playoff, representing the Big Ten as its champion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would have to predict Michigan State 31, Penn State 13.
I'd go MSU 27, Penn State around 10 or 13.
Okay. So now we're going to preview my Central Michigan Chippewas football team. Let me see that here.
Touchdown, Central Michigan!
Yeah, I still think Ryan Schilling should be the voice of the Chippewas football team, but unfortunately Don Shido is. But anyway, speaking of Ryan Schilling, you can catch the Schilling Report with him from 1 to 3 on the Team 92.1 FM in Lansing, WQTX in Lansing. Also download the Team 92.1 FM's app and go to the team921fm.com. Listen live. It can also be found on TuneIn Radio. Download the TuneIn Radio Pro mobile app and find the Team 92.1 FM. Back to the Chippewas, though. They are already bowl eligible. 6-5 overall, 5-2 in the MAC. They are welcoming in another in-state rival, the Eastern Michigan Eagles, who stink. 1-10 overall, 0-7 in the conference. The Eagles rank 127th out of 127 teams in the FBS in rush defense, with only 329.4 yards per game allowed, and are 121st in total defense, 513.5 yards allowed. They are surrendering an average of 42.7 points per game, which ranks 122nd nationally. Ouch! Oh my goodness.
In layman's terms, they suck.
Yeah, they do. Oh man. Yeah, absolutely. The Eagles finished 2-10 in each of the past three seasons and have not posted a winning record since going 6-5 in 1995. CMU has won 3 straight in 5 of the last 6 from EMU. That's pretty much it. My Chippewas are coming off a 27-14 win at the Kent State Golden Flashes, who are in between struggling and doing good, whatever. The Chippewas, I think, will rout them not only in yards but in scoring, but on the scoreboard as well. I think 56-3 CMU.
Honestly, if they don't beat them by 20 points, by more than 20 points, I'll be disappointed.
And I'll have an aneurysm. But those Homer Chippewa fans in Mount Pleasant, a win's a win. Duh. Get out of here. But either way, the Chippewas will be 7-5 with their route win, and 6-2 in the MAC. After that we'll just have to see what kind of bowl game the Chips will be in. They played in the Popeyes Bahamas Bowl against the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, and they scored a miracle touchdown only to lose by 1 point after going for 2, when they should have kicked in the extra point to tie it and saved the rest of the momentum for overtime, and they could have won that game. kind of like Brady Hoke going for 2 for Michigan when down 1 against Ohio State at home, and they miserably fail as Devin Gardner threw an easy interception.
I think the call, I didn't necessarily mind the call. I just think you should have just ran a better play. You could have just rolled Gardner out to the side, use his athleticism, spread him out. Don't just have him drop back, throw straight up pass. No, you should have just utilized his athletic ability to either try to get into the end zone himself or try to find someone out in the open and throw a touchdown that way. But, also another good comparison would be last week between Oklahoma and TCU. TCU made a mammoth comeback. It seemed like Oklahoma was going to blow it late, at TCU instead of going for the tie, which, looking back in hindsight, they should have just gone, just kicked the extra point all the way because they would have won.
Exactly.
Instead of going, when they left off 4 points off the board by going for two times, or exactly leaving off 2 points. Because if you just go for those 2 extra point kicks, early in the game or late in the game, you win. Even if it's by 1, you still win the game. But TCU only had themselves to blame, not only just how they played throughout, but also the earlier mistakes they made, and came at to bite them in the end, unfortunately.
Yep, so that clears it up for college football. So now let's move over to hockey. Well, the Red Wings, after winning 2 straight over the weekend at home against Los Angeles and in St. Louis, they come back home for their 200th consecutive sellout at Joe Louis Arena, and Pavel Datsyuk scores his 300th career goal, and the Wings have a 1-goal lead, and they have a power play with a few minutes to go, and with a chance to put it away, and they fail miserably to do so. And then they turn it over, and what do you know? They give up another game-tying goal with under 2 minutes to go, and the Bruins tie it at 2, and they go to overtime, and then another turnover with Zetterberg on the ice, and the Bruins win it in overtime 3-2. That is now 5 tying goals allowed by the Wings late in the third period now this season. 3 of them were overtime losses, including the one Wednesday night. I mean, where does that rank them in that department?
It's honestly, and especially in terms of seeing it happen over and over and over and over and over and over again the past, 3, 4, 5 years, I now rank them in terms of at least on par, and it makes sense since they're both owned by the Elch family, with the Tigers bullpen. Because now it seems like, whenever the Red Wings get a late 1-goal lead, you just hold your breath. You huddle around somebody and you just grab onto something for dear life, and while your heart is racing at 100 beats per second, because you know by practically any second, any given moment, the Red Wings will screw up, they will make a defensive error, or they'll allow a fluke goal to happen, and boom, they're tied up, and this game is going to overtime. It's commonplace now. It's like an easy script that you know what's going to happen, late in the episode.
Yeah, they play not to lose. And in my mind, with their power play late, with a few minutes to go, they just tried to kill it off against former Red Wing goaltender Jonas Gustafsson, who granted was red hot, but the Red Wings unanimously outshot the Bruins by like 15 plus shots. and then they shoot themselves in the freaking heads for like the 5th time. Jeff Blashill should not put old-ass captain Henrik Zetterberg on the ice in overtime. Like you mentioned to me in messages on Facebook, Zetterberg's legs can't take it any longer. He's getting too old. And newsflash for those who still think Zetterberg should be put in the shootout. Wrong. Zetterberg is like 2 out of his last 43 attempts in the shootout. So there goes that. If Zetterberg can still play in regulation, fine. He's already got 14 assists, 4 goals. Just keep playing him in regulation and put him away the rest of the game. Like in the closing minutes of the third period, when the Wings are up by 1 goal, and quit putting Luke Glendening out there. Jeff Blashill. Glendening is atrocious. He can't block shots. He can't score goals. He helps the team keep allowing game-time goals in the closing minutes of regulation, and he keeps shooting it. He keeps shooting pucks right at the goaltender's logo, the chest, just like most other shooters on this Red Wings roster. Yet, Ken Holland puts Landon Ferraro on waivers, and the Bruins claim him off waivers, and he gets a point for Boston Monday night. Ferraro, Kalle Järnkrok, Andres Nestrasil, and Janmark were all put on waivers by Ken Holland, and they developed better elsewhere. You gotta believe me. Holland is left with Glendening, Joachim Andersen, and Drew Miller on offense, and they all suck. They all can't produce. Plus, their defensemen can't do their job. Brendan Smith, Nicholas Kronwall, and Jonathan Eriksson all play poor defense as well. And the front office is still stuck with them, too. Can't anybody help this train wreck? Their offense also sucks this season because they're still shooting the puck right at the opposing goaltender, especially right to his chest, like I mentioned before, and also still shooting it wide of the net. Did you Wings fans see Drew Miller a few hours ago shoot it way wide of an open net in the third period? What a freaking joke. This is totally disgraceful. Another disgraceful point I like to point out. Their power play is so awful that it doesn't even try to attack. They pass the puck too much. They screw up. They F up. Too many turnovers and not too many shots on goal. And yet, everyone on social media, the Red Wings fan base, is still saying the Red Wings will be fine after every loss like this because they're improving and it's early in the season. I mean, come on.
It's not early. We can't use that excuse anymore.
It's late November.
Right. We're literally about to turn to December. At that point, we're closer to the midpoint of the season than we were to the beginning of the season. Okay, so stop with that excuse.
Yeah. Fine time to say they're fine already. My God.
Ah, shut up, you idiot. What? Oh.
That's there. It's like that's a lot worse than saying the preseason doesn't matter. Wowzers.
Yeah.
God almighty. If the Red Wings fans want to hear something bright, I'll give it to them. The only bright thing I can give you is Tomas Jurko was sent down to the Grand Rapids Griffins for a conditioning stint, and he has scored 5 goals in his last 2 games, including a hat trick.
Nice.
They should call him back up already. They should cut Glendening, terminate his contract, and let him go, and call up Jurko. Jurko's ready.
It's as we've seen so far is evident this past earlier in this season, whether it be waiting on Datsyuk to get back from his injury or seeing how he and Zetterberg has looked probably a step too slow in the overtime sessions. We may be preparing ourselves for a transition to the newer, youthful faces for the future much sooner than we anticipate. Now, I'm not saying, they're going to retire this year. No. I still think saying about another 2, maybe 3 years max left in them before it really starts to show, and then they would possibly consider that crossroads. But you got younger guys that are capable of helping, being good commodities to this team. Nyquist, Mantha, Larkin,
Athanasiou,
Pulkkinen,
Tatar.
Need I say more? Tatar, Yurko, like you just mentioned. And I wouldn't mind to see more of these guys get more chances on shifts and overtime. Like, for goodness sake, the other night, one of the guys that we mentioned in one of our previous shows, Pulkkinen, he got the overtime goal.
In St. Louis.
Right, so note to Coach Jeff, use him more in OT, use Nyquist more. Like, I wouldn't mind to seeing at least a line in OT that includes Nyquist and Pulkkinen. Now, depending on who you want your third guy to be, if you want to be dependent on Datsyuk, fine. But just you hope it doesn't lead to a bad turnover or a slow chase on a defender or opposing player that leads to the OT goal. But as long as you see two young guys with fresher legs on the ice for OT, then you would feel more confident about the Wings' chances of at least getting to the shootout without giving up a goal. So that's my thoughts in that regard.
Can I point out one last thing? Brad Richards still has not scored any goals, yet he came up with 2 assists in St. Louis, one of them on the game winner by Pulkkinen. Richards has got to help his own cause.
Yeah, you would think, especially since he came over from a Stanley Cup winning team last year in the Blackhawks.
Yeah, Chicago. Yeah, the Blackhawks were just too good. But, Richards is already a veteran, but I still think he's got that scoring touch. I think he should start proving it. He's got to start proving it. Otherwise, he's just no good to the Wings.
Obviously. And this would not be a good look for Ken Holland in that regard.
Ken Holland's an embarrassment. Totally. Except he's promoted Dylan Larkin to the NHL. Larkin already has 16 points, 8 goals and 8 assists. Isn't that amazing? There's another
outstanding.
There's another bright light for you Red Wing fans.
Yeah. It's not all doom and gloom. We're just expressing frustration of what could be better. Because, like I mentioned before with the Lions, I see potential with this Red Wing team, and I see even better potential. We have the new head coach, and I think you're going to do good things with Jeff Blashill as your head coach. And you got good young talent there to help lead you into the future once it's time for them to carry the torch from the likes of Datsyuk and Zetterberg. There's going to be growing pains as we get there, but we see at their best what they could bring. We just need to see more consistency. That's all we need. Now, should this team get to the playoffs, which I think we all believe they can and they will, if their offense doesn't improve, we may have to see a near Herculean effort for Peter Mrazek to at least get them to the second round. Because I think they will go as far as Mrazek will help them get to. If he's hot, they might actually pull a rabbit out of their behind and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. If he's so-so, they may be another one and done. That's just how it is in the NHL playoffs these days. If you get a hot goal, one of the things that will help you the most in playoffs is a hot goaltender. It's like having a great defense in the NFL playoffs and a great bullpen and great pitching for baseball. You need a hot goaltender to go a long way in May and June in the NHL.
Yeah, definitely. As far as I look at this entire Red Wings roster right now, there are still chunks of it that are like not productive as as opposed to the younger guys that are producing more than them. It's the guys that are not producing, which can pretty much keep hurting this team. Glendening, Anderson, and Miller, and Smith and Erickson and Cronwall, the stupid mistakes that they make, and the penalties that they take, and the lack of defense and offense, and not making plays and such. That's gonna be a very hard puzzle to solve for a much harder puzzle to solve for General Manager Ken Holland in the front office, unless he has the wisdom to cut Miller, Anderson, and Glendening. He can't just have Blashill let Anderson, Miller, and Glendening keep playing on the ice. If only Jeff Blashill would get his head straight. I know it's his first year as an NHL head coach, just like Brad Ausmus in 2014. And yeah, I have no choice but to compare Blashill to Brad Ausmus.
That's saying something.
Yeah, Blashill is like making the same stupid decisions in high leverage situations like Brad Ausmus did with his bullpen for the Tigers.
Yeah, I still believe that Blashill will turn out to be a very, very good choice to replace Mike Babcock, but he's got to get better at the very least in terms of having the right people out there for overtime, because all these points that the Red Wings are leaving out by losing these overtime games, they're going to add up. And, you don't want to look back at the end of the year saying, man, we should have won this game and that game, but because of the coach not having the right lineup out there, we lost that. And then because of that, we're 1 or 2 points out of the playoffs because of that.
Man, it's like a total travesty for this organization. I even have to compare Ken Holland to Dave Dombrowski, pending the stupid decisions he's made with the roster, as compared to the stupid decisions that Blashill's made with the lineups and BS like that. And it's just an entire mess, a toxic waste of a mess.
It's concerning to say the least, and it could get to a full-blown panic if not handled the right way, but you would hope they get their heads out of their rear ends and find a way to fix this soon before it gets too out of hand. Because, again, as we get closer to the winter months, December, January, February, you will start to see more of your team take shape of what they're going to be for the second half of the season. You don't want to be a situation where it was a couple of years ago where the Red Wings need to sputter and literally need to win during the last week of the season to keep their playoff hopes alive. You don't want to see it get to that type of situation. So whatever's plaguing them now, you hope they handle it and handle it fast.
Yep, I absolutely agree. The Wings have 5 more games left in their 6-game homestand. They play the Edmonton Oilers on Black Friday at 7:30, and then they play the Florida Panthers Sunday at 2 p.m. Then next week, later next week, they play the Buffalo Sabres, Arizona Coyotes, and Nashville Predators. The last time the Wings beat the Panthers at home was like in 2007.
Oh God, really?
Yeah. Since then, they've lost. They keep losing 1-goal games to the Panthers at home, and that pretty much freaking irritates me. And it's time for them. It's just time for the Wings to put this crap to an end. I'm tired of seeing the Wings lose to the Panthers at home. The Panthers suck. Still,
I'm surprised to hear that the Panthers are still a living franchise in NHL. I figured they would be one of the teams that were killed off by the likes of the Atlanta Thrashers, but nope, they're still alive and kicking. What surprises me?
Man, that's the worst part about it. The Wings keep opening the door for the Panthers, and the Panthers take the W. Just like that. Oh, my God. This is just, it all adds up to yet another aneurysm that the Wings are giving me. It's a great point on that, Ed. So now we move on to the Pistons. I'm done talking about the Wings. I'm tired of talking about the Wings.
Yeah.
And Rasheed from long range.
Subject tonight.
Yep.
Left sideline three, and he answers.
Here, George Blaha and Mark Champion on their calls there on those sound bites. That means it's Pistons time. The Pistons demolish and extinguish the fourth-seeded Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade playing on the court, 104-81 at the Palace of Auburn Hills. Andre Drummond finishes with 18 points and 20 rebounds. Reggie Jackson with 18 as well. Drummond almost went 20-20 again. And the Pistons were nailing threes from all over the court. Tolliver, Jackson, KCP, even Steve Blake. I saw him hit one, but I guess that was...
Steve Blake. How
yeah.
about that?
Yeah. But third quarter, Pistons pulled away, and the fourth quarter, the Pistons never let up. They just kept grounding the Heat by over 20 points. They led by as many as 27, as far as I can recall. Just a horrible night for the Heat. A very good night, a great night, in fact, for the Pistons. If you saw at least chunks of that game, what were your thoughts?
Great show, great performance, great turnaround in lieu of the more recent disappointing games that they've had. Of course, what comes to mind, the game against Minnesota, against the Timberwolves, where recently they've come out, they've looked lethargic, they've looked slow, they've made some mistakes, they don't know what to do on offense, and it seemed like it was either on most nights Andre Drummond just doing things by himself, but as opposed to tonight, as you mentioned in the third quarter especially, they were rolling and clicking on all cylinders. And it's very encouraging to see them do this to a team where the Miami Heat, where you would say they were around that top four Eastern Conference contenders after the likes of Cleveland, Chicago, and Atlanta in that regard. So if see them do this, now granted, it's not, oh my goodness, every time they play the Heat, they're going to smash them, but it was very encouraging to see when at their most potential, what the Pistons can amount to. Tonight was a fine example. It reminded me in some ways of the opening night win against Atlanta. Drummond was, again, an absolute freak of nature on the boards. He had another 20-rebound game. I believe Justin Spiro mentioned on Twitter a couple hours ago that this is, his fourth 20-rebound game this season. I think anybody else in the NBA, depending on who has it, has at least one, has just one. This is just Drummond's fourth by himself. Amazing, truly remarkable. All he needs to do is just step up, just make minor adjustments in his post game, and he for sure should be an all-star, voted in as an all-star this year. If he's snubbed, I'll be highly upset. But anyway, better shooting from everyone involved, not just the likes of Jackson or KCP, like you mentioned. Even Steve Blake got in on the fun. So, good win, great show, great performance. You want to see them build up on that and build more of a consistent streak. Now, I'm not saying, go all Golden State on us, but, at least, every now and then win 3 out of your next 4, that type of deal. Make us feel confident that, hey, you've gotten your crap together and you're going to put up forth a more tolerable, consistent run that will lead to a good spot in the playoffs this year. So that's one encouraging to see, one encouraging thing that I would see, or I would view coming out of this win tonight.
Yep. So the Pistons go on the road Friday and Sunday against the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Brooklyn Nets, and then they return home to play the Houston Rockets on Monday. I think Kevin Durant and Serge Ibaka are two of the players to watch for the Thunder. The Brooklyn Nets, I haven't looked at the standings yet, but let me go to NBA.com real quick.
I don't think they've been quite well. I mean, I remember looking on Twitter last week and saw that, or maybe it was this past Sunday. They were giving Golden State. They almost handed Golden State their first loss of the year, and some people were very surprised. They're like, of all teams for the Warriors to lose their first game of the season to really the Brooklyn Nets. That was the impression I got from looking at some of the comments on social media. But you know. With that game sandwiched in between OKC and Houston, it's imperative that the Pistons win that game, lest they risk going 0-3 in their next stretch, which, quite frankly, you do not want to see after a win like this tonight.
Yep, the Brooklyn Nets are 3-12.
Oh God, yeah, you better win that game. You better freaking absolutely win.
Absolutely, yep.
That's like the Red Wings losing at home to the Panthers again.
Oh man, yeah. If they lose to the Pistons lose to the Nets, I will have an aneurysm on that one too.
Ugh.
The Thunder are 10-6, third in the Western Conference. They lead the Northwest Division, and then Houston Rockets. Let me look at that. Houston is 5-10, fourth place in the Southwest Division. Not quite as bad as Brooklyn, but it's still a winnable game.
Yeah, I mean, but I still give Houston their respect because they were the runner-up in the West last year. So I give them their props and respect in that regard, and I don't see them as a pushover, even though clearly they have some flaws. I mean, for goodness sake, they just fired their coach, Kevin McHale, a few days ago. So they're a team that's trying to find their own footing, so to speak. So, well, I think that might be another winnable game. The Pistons should not sleep on that one. You can have any off night in the NBA at any given point of the season, just against Miami tonight. But I think if Pistons fans want to be more encouraged, they would hope that this team tries their best at least to win 2 of the next 3. If they beat OKC, I'll be shocked. Just like I consider that beyond par of the Golden State game and the Cleveland game. One of those that they won. So and the other one, it got out of hand, but a little bit, but they showed their perseverance and made it as close as possible. So if they at least have a good showing, win or lose, I'd be encouraged. If they get blown out, of course I'll be a little bit disappointed, but have a good showing, keep it close, and hey, if you win, good for you. But win at least one, and for the love of God, don't go 0-3.
Absolutely. I think the Pistons should take it at about 2 out of 3 if they can't beat the Thunder. Pistons are in 8th place in the Eastern Conference again, 8-7, 4th place in the Central Division behind the 9-5 Pacers, who are in 3rd place in the East. The 9-4 Bulls in 2nd place in the Eastern Conference and in the Central Division, and the top seed in the East, Cleveland Cavaliers, 11-4. Pistons about a week ago beat the Cleveland Cavaliers by 5. That's
a nice feather in their cap, to say the least.
Yeah, we can relive that win for as long as we want to, but come crunch time in the regular season, the Pistons have got to put the pedal to the metal. That's the thing that matters.
Yep.
So, moving on to college basketball, the Michigan Wolverines have lost 2 games in a row. Both of them are outs. One of them to Xavier last Friday night at Chrysler Center, 86-70, and then the other one at Chrysler Center to number 18 UConn, the Huskies, 74-60. The Musketeers.
Slight correction.
Yep.
Excuse me, pardon the interruption, Taylor. Slight correction. I believe this one tonight against UConn was played in the Bahamas, if I'm not mistaken. I noticed that after looking at some tweets and such. So, slight correction. This was played in the Bahamas, but still another bad loss.
Yeah. Yep. Against the UConn Huskies. Yep. The one against the Xavier Musketeers was at Chrysler Center. Thank you, Ed. But this Wolverines basketball team is faltering like they were last year in the beginning non-conference schedules.
It's not. It's very unpleasant to see. It's on some instances you can see how athletically inferior they are to some of these teams, namely what UConn looked tonight. It's nice to see that Karis LeVert has recovered quite well from his injury, from his bad broken foot injury that cost him the season a year ago. But it's worrisome when he's literally, it seems, the only player giving any type of production, offensively at least. I've still yet to see Derek Walton Jr. coming off his funk. He barely scored double digits here tonight. He scored 10 points tonight. Zach Irvin, I don't know what the hell is going on with him. Missing shot after shot after shot. He's shown much better potential than that. I don't know what's wrong with him. Aubrey Dawkins hasn't been playing very well. These are other guys that I've named. You would expect them to play better than what they're showing right now, especially when you have Spike Albrecht recovering from his off-season surgery. So you're gonna need other guys to step up. Another name like Muhammad Ali Abdul Rahman. That's another one that you need to see step up as we move closer and closer down the line to conference play. So, if anything, the biggest concern, without doubt, would be the offense and how it seems like it's Karis LeVert and everybody else. It's like LeVert is the only person that's able to play, whereas everybody else is just doing whatever they can to not be, I don't know what, but it's certainly not being producing rather. Obviously, they need to pick that up because if this trend continues, my expectations are going to go down and down more. Where I hope they just get to the second, if they make the tournament, I think just get to the second weekend as opposed to getting all the way to the Sweet 16. So that's my brief thoughts on that matter. You hope John Beilein finds a way to fix it up soon because, truth be told, he's done a great job of bringing back this program from relative obscurity in the past 8 or so years. You don't want to, and you would hate to see it falter now and go into a tailspin. But I have faith in John Beilein. I've always had, and I have no doubt he will find a way, whether it be lineup adjustments, the right schemes, or whatever the case may be, but he'll find a way to get this under control. I have faith in Coach Beilein.
Yep. The Wolverines aren't really that terrible. They're a lot better than that. In other words, the Michigan State Spartans are winning big without Gavin Schelling after their upset over Kansas. They absolutely destroy the Eastern Michigan Eagles men's basketball team, who also sucks, 92-46 in East Lansing, and then that's Arkansas Pine Bluff, 92-46, and then they destroy Eastern Michigan 89-65 at Breslin Center. They're winning in Gavin Schilling's absence just proves why the Spartans men's basketball team under Tom Izzo, who has coached them for many years, just keeps finding ways to win and overcome adversity at all costs.
Yep.
And looking at the schedule ahead, they are at Boston College on Thanksgiving Day at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. The game against Eastern Michigan was in East Lansing, but it was the opening round of the Wooden Legacy tournament. Then the Spartans head to Fullerton, California, and take on the Boston College Eagles. That's at 6:30 on ESPN2. Then they play either UC Irvine, that's Chicago Irvine, or Boise State. And then they play either Evansville, Providence, Santa Clara, or Arizona on the 29th. The UC Irvine Boise State game for Michigan State is on the 27th. That's on Black Friday. And then they will play one game in the ACC Big Ten Challenge on December 2nd at home against the Louisville Cardinals at 7:15 on ESPN. And then they'll play Binghamton and Maryland Eastern Shore in Florida and Northeastern in Oakland before they open their regular season. They open their Big Ten season on the road at Iowa at 9. That is on BTN. Their first Big Ten Conference home game is on January 7th, 2016 against the Illinois Fighting Illini at either 7 or 9 on either ESPN, ESPN2, or ESPNU. Then they wrap it up with two back-to-back games. Wait, that's not two back-to-back games. Either on March 5th or March 6th. It is at home against Thad Matta's Ohio State Buckeyes. Their last road game in the Big Ten is at Rutgers on March 2nd at Piscataway, New Jersey at 7 p.m. So the Spartans play Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Maryland, Northwestern, Rutgers, Michigan, Purdue, Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Penn State, Rutgers, and Ohio State. But I think that with the 4-0 record, the Spartans are really ready to take on the rest of the Big Ten.
Absolutely, they should without doubt be considered one of the top 2 or 3 favorites, especially of what we've seen so far on the out-of-conference schedule. Izzo is, of course, working his magic. It's not even March yet, so they should be one of the perennial favorites to win the Big Ten in the upcoming couple of months, and maybe even get a number 1 seed to start the tournament. Once the 64-team tournament was all said and done.
Yeah. This is why Izzo is such an excellent coach. One of the best coaches in college basketball. One of the greatest head coaches in college basketball history. And right now, he just keeps leading his team to victories. He keeps on putting them together, putting the pieces together. So, with all that covered, my CMU men's basketball team lost all 3 of their games in the Gulf Coast Showcase in Estero, Florida. They lost to Weber State in a very close one, 63-60, when Rayshon Simmons just barely missed what would have been a game-winning layup in the final seconds. The Weber State, pardon my pronunciation mistake there, Weber State. The Weber State Wildcats went on to shoot and hit 2 free throws and win 63-60. Then the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers smashed my Chips 88-60, and then the Milwaukee came McNeese State. Wait, that's the next game. Milwaukee came back to beat beat us 84-78. So the Chippewas are 2-3 overall in the conference. Just a tough season opening tournament for the Chips, but not. I'm not going to act too much of a shill here. 2-3 is not a good start. They gotta finish games, execute, and play better. And Keno Davis has to turn it up at least a notch or two. So the Chips play at home against McNeese State at McGurk Arena on November 30th in Mount Pleasant at 7 p.m. Then they're at Grand Canyon. They got Aquinas, Texas Southern, and then they're at BYU. Then they're at home against Howard and William Mary Lourdes, which wraps up the non-conference schedule. And then they open up MAC play at home against Eastern Michigan on January 6th. The same date, the CMU Chippewas gymnastics team opens their regular season against the Northern Illinois Huskies, I think. Let me check the gymnastics schedule. I know it's not important, but Chips have another long MAC schedule, which ends with a game at home against the arch-rival Western Michigan Broncos on March 4th at 7 inside McGurk Arena. Yeah, I was right. The gymnastics team opens their MAC season at Northern Illinois at 8 o'clock on January 22nd, not January 6th. But they open their regular season at home against Temple at McGurk Arena on January 3rd at 1 p.m. The Mid-American Conference Tournament for men's basketball is on March 7th at whichever campus site, depending whether the Chips are home or on the road. Depends on which seed they will finish in. The Milwaukee forget it. Why don't we just move on to why don't we just
I think we got one more subject to talk about, right?
Yeah, the Tigers.
That one is long gone.
Former closing pitcher Joaquin Soria has just rejected an offer from the Tigers, meaning it'll be more difficult for the Tigers to sign Joaquin Soria because he asked for way more money than K-Rod asked when the Tigers got Francisco Rodriguez in a trade for one minor league infielder, Javier Betancourt. And I still think the Tigers need Soria as like a setup guy to give Francisco Rodriguez a chance to get a save.
Well, having him in the pen would have been a very, very nice addition, very comforting addition, or re-addition, depending on how you look at it. In addition to Francisco Rodriguez, disappointed to see that most likely it won't happen, but I believe this is why they went after Rodriguez, contrary to what the report may say, because I'm thinking, in my opinion, Soria had asked for his offer, which I think was around $27 million contract for over 3 years, which meant the Tigers would have been required to pay an average of $8 to $9 million per year on Soria, which I think is a bit much. He's good, but I don't think he's worth that type of money. So to get a guy like Rodriguez at essentially half that amount. Is a very, very good job done by the Tigers in that regard. Yeah, you would have loved to see Soria come back. At the very least, gives assurance that the back end of the bullpen will be good. But hopefully, that means that they won't stop right here with the Rodriguez acquisition. Maybe they do whatever they can. Maybe they go after someone else. If it's a Jonathan Papelbon, or someone in that regard. All my hopes with them in that instance. But it's nice to see they're doing at least a couple of good things right in this off season so far. So a bit disappointing to be left out on the Soria sweepstakes, but hopefully in the long run it won't hurt too bad. I believe there's another inkling of Tigers news that Alex Avila, son, of course, of now new Tigers GM Al Avila, starting catcher for the past 2 years for Detroit, had a breakout 2011 season, has since declined in quality since then.
Sign a one-year deal with the White Sox.
For just under $2.5 million.
Pretty cheap.
I would say good for Alex in that regard. We remember hearing rumblings that more than likely his own father would not guarantee him a spot on the roster next year. So if Alex, I think, took it into his own hands, let's avoid that awkward scenario and just let me go play ball somewhere else. I hope he does. You hope he does well. Obviously, not except against us whenever the White Sox play the Tigers. But at least, hey, he'll be reunited with Abisayo Garcia.
Yeah, and speaking of trades, though, I heard on the Detroit Sports Rag podcast, episode 6, that when Moss and Spiro were touching on the Cameron Maben trade, that most Tigers fans were thrilled by by that trade. Moss and Spiro were not, because his offense kind of isn't all that great. But he hit 267 his last season with the Atlanta Braves, and they gave up Ian Kroll and minor league prospect outfielder Gabe Spire. That I don't think I see much wrong with the trade. I'm not too excited about it, but I don't see too much wrong.
I think fans got excited because of the name value alone, and of course they remember how Maben was used as one of the prospects of the trade deal that brought Miguel Cabrera to Detroit. So I think that's playing, that nostalgic element is playing into the fans' viewpoint for a minute. It caught me off guard to say a little bit, to see wow, he's getting traded to Detroit. I would expect him to at least have a slightly better year. That's the optimist in me. I was mentioning about the cynic in me. Now I'm talking the optimist. I always seem to be more optimistic towards the Tigers than I am with the Lions. But anyway, back on subject, back on point, back on topic. I could see him, if you platoon him the right way, whether it be against a lefty or a righty, he can be very productive offensively. Defensively, we wasn't quite as stout last year. Hopefully that improves. Also, you wouldn't expect him to be as bad as Torrey Hunter had been in the last couple of years of his career. So hopefully he doesn't reach that levels of deplority. But I'm fine with the signing. I'm not going to go, oh, wow, this is going to make us a contender. No. It was just a necessary acquisition for more depth in the outfield, which you and I have talked about before in a previous episode. So good for them in that regard. In terms of adding depth, same thing with adding depth in the bullpen with the Francisco Rodriguez acquisition. I would hope they keep it up, do whatever they can, find relevant, dependable players at needed positions, needed spots on this team. to make us look at the very least a presentable team for next year, because we are no longer the team with team to beat in the AL Central. That has been made clear the past couple of years with the Kansas City Royals getting to the World Series in back-to-back years, of course, winning this year. So we're no longer the team to beat. We, as the shirt used to say, we no longer own the Central. So we got to make whatever moves that we can to improve our stock and have us as dependable as possible to try and take down KC next year.
Yeah, we need more relief pitchers. We need Doug Fister back to fill in the starting rotation. What kind of relief pitching are we looking at to try to improve it?
Well, you would hope, at least in some instances, more improvement from some of your own homegrown talent, i.e., Bruce Rondon. If that's the case, that would be better. A good alternative as opposed to spending money to try to fix the bullpen, because you can fix it all you want through acquisitions, but if you keep spending money, you're not going to have time to fill in the needs. So that part's going to depend on your own talent that you already have getting better in their own regard. So that's one aspect that I would hope to see at the very least in terms of the bullpen.
Yeah, last year, I wanted Aroldis Chapman, a very hard thrower for the Cincinnati Reds. Other teams have shown interest in him, but not the Tigers. I don't know why. He may have cost too much money. I think.
Yeah, I think it's more financially than anything else, because, like I said, they have other holes, so many other holes to fill. They can't spend all of their cap try to plug in one need. I think you might have found a reliable closer in Rodriguez. You try to fill, now you go try to find yourself another set of men. If that doesn't happen, okay, you just got to hope your other guys in the bullpen get better on their own. You seem to have at least added more depth to the outfield spot with the acquisition of Maben. Now you got to try to find yourself a good, reliable starting pitcher. And hint, there's all, here's another hashtag that I'm starting. Bring home Doug. Bring Doug home, however way you want to look at it. Please bring back Doug Fister. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and make up for that Fister trade that Dombrowski mistakenly made, and which he never regretted. The Maben trade meant that Rajai Davis is likely not coming back in Detroit. Too much cap space, and Rajai Davis was making plenty of mistakes, not only in the base pass but in the outfield as well. He's
so I could see this deal,
and at the plate.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see in terms of what our outfield looks like. Anthony Ghost will be at center. J.D. Martinez will be at right field. And Maben will platoon left field with Tyler Collins, I think.
Yeah, if Tyler Collins makes it.
Right. If not, then maybe they will bring back Rajai and have him platoon with Maben. That's yet to be seen. So.
Right, but again, Davis is likely not returning. So if Tyler Collins doesn't make it either, that would make Maben like the only left fielder on the roster. But I'm pretty sure Tyler Collins will make the roster, though. I see Collins playing at least 50 games around, something like that. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
So Ed, I thank you bunches for helping me out here.
No mention it. No problem.
And we will talk next Monday at midnight. See how much yet we will cover. If there's a lot to cover, which is likely, starting with the Lions and Red Wings and Pistons and college football and college basketball, then we'll be back for episode 176 on Spreaker of the Detroit Sports Truth. Thanks again, Ed.
You're welcome, Taylor, and happy Thanksgiving to you, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody else.
Yep, thank you. And I believe we'll be on Spreaker for episode 176, Monday at midnight. So for Ed Smith, I am Taylor Phillips. Wishing you all a happy Thanksgiving as well. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
The views expressed by the host of this podcast are not opinion-based or for entertainment purposes. They are actually facts and truth, no matter if other people like it or not. It is the Detroit Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Ah, shut up, you idiot. What? Oh.